What up, everybody? Welcome to Music Blueprint. I am super excited for today's episode. I have got my awesome cousin. I know you've already seen one of my cousins. That was his sister, and this is Caleb. So, yay!
What's up? Good to be here.
Yeah. So
Very excited.
I'm super pumped because one, I always think it's fun when I get to bring someone on that I've known my entire life. But two, I think you just have a lot of knowledge about obviously church because you're involved in church, you run a church, but also just like random band things. And we even mentioned earlier before we started this podcast of, different COVID things that you guys have had to adjust to as a church and how there's really a need. So why don't you first start with talking a little bit about yourself, your background and stuff like that, and then we can kind of go from there.
Yeah. Well, it's great to be here. And my name's Caleb. And I've been in ministry full time now since I came out of high school, since I was 18. Yeah. I'm 33 now. So it's like 15 years maybe.
Ooh, you dated yourself.
Yeah. So 15 years full-time ministry. And then before that, obviously just being a pastor's kid, growing up in the church, literally growing up like sleeping underneath the chairs during prayer meetings and just always being around the church and ministry. My dad planted the church that I serve at now, called Turning Point Church in Norco, California. And so just always been involved with the church on many different levels. Yep. And so my role has changed over the years, but something that I've been involved with ever since I was a teenager was the worship ministry and the worship team, music team. So that was kind of like my sister's thing. It was kind of like other people in the church would sing and do stuff and wasn't really involved with. I didn't even sing.
Didn't you play drums?
I did play drums.
Okay.
My first instrument was I started playing drums, and I really started picking it up maybe when I was like 12 or 13, and then got better and better. And we had a guy in our church that was really good at it.
Shout out Ron.
Yeah, Ron, and he'd give me some lessons and just self-taught, and we had a drum set at church where I had access to it anytime I wanted, and just taught myself. And so I started playing drums in the church. So musically, I've always had good rhythm, and so that came naturally to me. But when I was about 16, 17, I really felt like, God had pushed me toward like playing guitar and singing, and I've never sang in front of anybody, done any of that. So, and then I got into that, started leading worship, and was not great at it, to be honest. I mean, just, I wasn't great at it. I wasn't like this, expert or just like prodigy child.
Bach coming in, swinging, singing all these runs.
Yeah, no, that was not me. But I will say this is that church affords a lot of grace for people to learn.
Yes.
And to grow and have an opportunity to grow.
Absolutely.
So I was able to learn, and I played, and I already had great rhythm from playing drums, and so picking up the guitar was pretty natural. I've learned some other instruments. I play a little bit of piano, and and we'll play some other things at church that I need to. But but my main thing is drums and just leading worship on the guitar. So, but anyways, I've got a lot of experience now, probably 20 years now of music in the church.
Gosh, that's crazy.
So,
I actually, what's funny is I never connected the time frame of that, like how long we've been doing that and how long you've been doing that.
Yeah.
It's kind of crazy.
Yeah, I don't even consider, it's funny, I don't consider myself a musician or an artist, or I never consider myself that. I just, I don't see myself in that way. I feel, obviously now that I've got where I'm at now in this season, I'm spending more time being speaking and doing ministry stuff in other ways,
preaching and stuff like that.
Preaching and doing other things, but I'm still involved with our music team. I'm still serving in that capacity, but I don't even consider myself a musician. But you sit back and think about it. I have a lot of years, and so obviously I know people in the church world, other churches and other people, and have a lot of experience, good, bad, and music has changed a lot in the church in the last 20 years. So just seeing that evolve and be where it's at today, which I think it's in a great place today. Yeah. It's very exciting. And so, so that's some of my background and where I'm at and where it came from.
Yeah. And it's so funny that you mentioned, like, I really did not put a year amount. Like, now that you say that, it's like, oh my gosh, wow, you really are a good person to bring on here, because the expertise of knowing the insides and out of a church and what kind of the church needs, especially at your guys' level, because I would say you guys are like a medium to smaller church, right? Right? Is that accurate? But that's most churches. Most churches are not the mega churches.
Yeah.
They're the community driven, in a specific city kind of thing. So why don't you talk a little bit about, like, I guess this kind of just naturally leads into, like, what your church has needed during COVID and what other churches have needed during COVID, because I really think there's a big opportunity for musicians to kind of fill a gap, especially in a time where, as musicians, we have no shows. Yeah. We're not allowed to play shows. There's no opening for touring. Everything's shut down. So then the question is, where are we going to get our income? And there's always a need somewhere. You just have to find it. And obviously with the church, you guys really have an opening for that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would start by saying this is that just like culture changes, churches change, not from a standpoint of our theology or, our values, but we adapt to technology and taking advantage of opportunities that technology gives the church, and then also adapting to our culture and how people consume things, and being willing to adjust. And so there has been a resistance within the church, not all churches, but some churches, to not go online, to not be technology. Back in the day, decades ago, it was electric guitar was evil.
Oh, right, for
and
sure.
So like, it was, the organ was the only
acceptable
anointed instrument that God created.
Yeah, and then you just play the bass line on the.
So even churches were built for acoustic settings. So like our church that we have is 55 years old. It's built for a choir and an organ, and and if you ever had a choir and an organ singing there, it sounds amazing. It's not built for live music. So it's a very hard challenge to do live music with drums.
It's super difficult.
Yeah. So we'd had to do soundproofing and different things, but the churches had to adjust, and things have changed. New instruments, even in the last, I guess 2 decades that I've been involved, it's changed dramatically. And it's wonderful that there's so many churches making music now, and so many churches getting involved in the game, that there's so much more opportunities there. And the music industry has responded by valuing churches. Yeah. So like you see Yamaha and all kinds of big name companies that have poured millions of dollars into pursuing relationships, because every church has lighting, cameras, musical equipment, speakers, and they have the finances, they have the need, they have the desire, and there's one on every corner.
Yeah, it's like a church basically has a benefactor, multiple benefactors. You know what I mean? Like if you want to get into like the tithing aspect, right? Like they have a whole community of people that fund the things of what the church finds important to further the ministry, right? Yeah. So if you're a person that's in tech and you're trying to make sales call, or you work at Guitar Center and you're a rep at Guitar Center, why not easily make these relationships with churches? Like every church needs a new guitar, or like a piano, or like all these different things, and now you're the supplier of that. And even if you got one sale a year from one church, but if you had 100 churches, you're making 100 sales a year, and if you're getting commission off that could be huge.
Absolutely. So anyways, I just wanted to kind of go back and say that the worship, because some people have a conception about what the church is about and what it's like, and they haven't been in a church, or they have never been in a church for years, and or they grew up in a church that was more traditional, and they haven't been exposed to a contemporary worship setting. Yeah. So if you have a conception, and right away you're just like, oh, I'm going to tune out, because you need to go online on YouTube and watch these people are doing things that are like at the top, like level 10 thing. Like I watched Elevation Worship's New Year's Eve worship night. Yeah. Incredible. Live.
Straight up Justin Bieber concert.
They had Torrin Wells and all these big name, Brandon Lake and all these big name people, and it's just incredible. And they're doing things that rivals anybody. Right. At anybody's level of expertise. So there's trust me, it's not just hokey. There's something there. Yeah. So I just want to say that. But getting to COVID has absolutely, I would say there was a move going in the direction of online, right? And there was people starting to write books, and there's big churches were kind of maybe ahead of the curve, but a lot of small churches, at least I can just say our church, we had an online presence, but it was not good. It was terrible. One camera in the back. Yeah. We didn't care about it. We didn't value it. We didn't understand it. We just said, you know what? People are doing this. Maybe we should do it too. Yeah. Well, COVID hits, and then all of a sudden, everything has to be online.
Right.
We don't have the equipment. We have nobody that knows how to do
they
it.
didn't even have an updated board, you guys. Like
No.
literally, we had to update the board and everything. Like,
Everything.
we needed a new.
So we hadn't gone
everything.
digital, and so
Yeah.
we said, okay, now we're gonna go digital. Now we're gonna buy the camera. Now we're gonna buy all this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So like we're literally calling anybody, everybody, and then you try to get the equipment, it's all sold out.
Yeah.
So when COVID hit, every microphone, every digital
Everything
board,
was bought up.
everything that you can think of online
Right.
audio was
Yeah.
sold out.
Yep.
And so
So true.
it was just crazy. So we had to totally adapt on the fly, and we were kind of caught on our heels, to be honest. But I think we're a microcosm of one church, one example of what a lot of churches have gone through, and so there's a huge opportunity for people, young musicians that are great studio musicians or young songwriters, different people. They're literally, their skill set is writing social media,
Right.
YouTube.
Yep.
Like you're literally an expert at those things, and that's exactly what the church needs.
Yes.
So if you could just marry those two, there's a huge opportunities that churches are willing to pay people to do that. If you walk into a church and say, "Look, here's my stuff. Here's an example of what I do,
Right.
and I just want to serve in your church. I say,
Yeah.
I'm looking to, for a part-time job." You could literally, help out a few churches do that,
Yeah.
and just help train their volunteers and
You could even run just their social media.
Just their social media.
Honestly, like there's so many options now of scheduling posts, like with
Yeah.
Creator Studio or Hootsuite or whatever. And if you just maintained their presence online,
Yeah.
obviously you would have to curate all their posts ahead of time, but if you just got 3 churches and said, "Hey, pay me a part-time, right? Part-time amount 20K a year or whatever." And then you get and then you get 3 of those churches, that's making 60K a year, and you're just running social medias for people and managing them.
Yeah.
Get a Canva account. Micah told me last time, like, an annual Canva account is like $8 a month. I'm like, that's nothing for you to be able to curate posts and get your look right and everything. So there's a lot of opportunity. But what would you say to, like, because even though there's been this huge movement in COVID, how do you convince a church that that's still important?
Yeah, I would say, you just need to find someone who's open. And I don't think you have to convince people anymore. I mean,
Yeah.
I gotta be honest. If you're still trying to convince them, they're probably really
Not.
not
Yeah,
the
it's
right
not
fit.
worth it.
But so you have to. It's not about convincing anymore. I don't think. I think
Mm-hmm.
it's more about just saying, "Hey, this is my skill set, and
Yeah.
I can be a help."
Yeah.
And so. It's not easy. Everybody's on social media, but not everybody knows social
don't
media.
understand
Like I don't. I mean, I'm on social media. I have no
Yeah.
idea and I know it's a whole thing of the art of it and knowing how to get more clicks and
Yeah.
how to get more follows and what to do. And you guys study this for a living.
Yeah.
You literally I'm going to use this color because this color gets me more clicks. So you're like, I don't know that.
Yeah.
But like, there's people already know those things. So yeah. So I mean, like YouTube's big. I think also just knowing YouTube and knowing. I mean, our church is trying to get more subscribers, get more people online. And now that the church is opening up again, now we're doing both at the same time.
Yeah.
So we're doing live and we're doing where we were doing pre-recorded stuff in the beginning. Now we're doing live and getting back to normal, opening up the church.
Right.
And so, yeah, there's lots of opportunities on so many different levels. So really just what you're interested in, what you want to do. But there's lots of churches on every corner. Literally just go to your
Literally
city.
throw a rock.
You don't have to travel to LA or some big city. Just
Right.
every corner.
Yep.
There's churches that need help and that would just die to have someone like you walk in the door and say, I would love to just get
Right.
plugged in here.
How do you think too, like if you're gonna, let's say you walk through the door, I think there's 2 questions here. Like, if you go to the church, how do you approach the pastor? Like, what would you give in terms, because you're a pastor, right? Like,
Yeah.
if somebody came up to you, they went to your church,
Yeah.
and they just said, what do you think? Like, straightforward, let me lay it out, or like
Yeah.
you just be like, hey, I really like to help the church, but like this is what I'm trying to do. And then also, what would be the format of what you would think if you didn't go to that church?
Yeah.
So
I think obviously if you have a relationship already with a church,
it's easier.
it's easier.
Way
If you have a friend that goes to a church and they have a relationship, just any kind of relationship, so that because there's a lot of people that are always calling the church, trying to sell something, trying to do a program. So churches are used to that. So I wouldn't just cold call them. I wouldn't. I would maybe go to their service. maybe watch them online a little bit, get to know some of the church, and then so okay, this is somewhere I think I can help, and then talk to them.
Lead. I think that's actually a really great point. Is show up to the service, and just kind of get a feel about what the church's MO is, because then when you approach them, you're not just making a cold call about marketing or X, Y, and Z. You're saying, hey, I noticed that you guys really love gospel. I'm actually a gospel artist, grew up in the church. I'm kind of looking for a place to call my own, or I'm looking for a place to serve or whatever, but X, Y, and Z. And then you can kind of lay it out from there. Even on the marketing side, you can say, oh, I see that you guys are really interested in this. And then you can kind of use that as a way to get your foot in the door, because then the church understands, oh, this person already understands our church to a certain degree. So it wouldn't be hard for us to communicate that this is what our goals are to them.
Yeah. I would say it's just like the music industry, relationships.
Sure.
So I mean,
absolutely.
It's literally the same thing.
It's the same thing.
It's using your same skills of building relationships in the music industry, which is like, if you don't have relationships, you're not going to go anywhere.
Yeah.
It's the same thing with the church, building relationships, building a rapport, building trust.
Yeah.
You got to understand there's a lot of knucklehead people, weird people out there. And so you got to build some trust. Right. So obviously, like if you grew up in the church, and you understand church culture a little bit, and you grew up in the church, and you played at your church, and you served at your church,
you understand the
church. Already know.
Right.
You already are ready to go in. If you don't know anything about the church, it's gonna be a little harder.
Yeah.
Now you could just be someone who says, "Hey, I'm not gonna be so much a part of your church, but I'm just gonna be someone that's really just editing videos for you. I'm gonna be the person just online, and I'll meet with your team once or twice a month, and then I'll be helping you online."
Right.
But I think the way that you're gonna get the most benefit is being a part of the church and serving the church. Number one, there's the value of what you're sowing, the seeds that you're sowing back into your community, into the kingdom of God. There's a value there for you personally, and there's also just the value of you just having a job and you getting trained. I think that something that I think that's important is that you don't realize this, but maybe they do realize this, but there's something that you can get out of it.
Yeah.
And
sure.
you're gonna grow, you're gonna get challenged, and the church, you're gonna learn people skills. Like if you serve on a worship team, everybody's got personalities, just like in any band.
Yeah.
Everybody's got personalities, and you got to understand all these people are there for most of them for free.
Yeah.
So they're not there because they're getting paid.
Right. So it's like don't piss them off.
They're there because they want to serve. They have a different motivation. So learning people skills and how to work together in a team and how to play a country song, and then you're going to do a gospel song, then you're going to do a pop song.
Right.
And like that makes you a better musician. And so like you learn so much from playing with the band. And so like if you're like, let's say right now you're a teenager and you're still in high school and you sing and why would you not be involved in the church?
Yeah.
I mean, think about, I can name right now a dozen people that are literally the top of their industry that started in the church.
Yeah.
That's where they
almost
sharpen
everybody.
Almost everybody.
Literally,
it's rare to find someone who's not.
Oh my gosh, I have not found an artist yet. Well, that's not true. I do know a few, but that's just because I'm so immersed in the industry. But most of the artists that I know grew up in church. Yeah. Like they started in the church, they started singing in the church, then they started writing with some of their friends at church. I mean, the church is really the center of where a lot of musicality comes from. And I think sometimes we've lost some of the morality aspect of where that seed came from, you know, and a lot of people end up coming to LA or New York and there's a darkness there and they don't know how to combat that. But the church really is the seed of a lot of creativity and artistry and
they've been literally the birthing place of music.
Yes.
And a place where people develop their skills and then goes out and takes that into the world. And so you hear gospel music in, jazz and all these different genres and people that grew up in the church. So there's a lot of history there. And so maybe for some young people, they don't understand that. They might not say like, I don't even, it's just church, it's boring. Or, I went to church, I tried it once, but you really, if you get in the right place, in the right family, right. I mean, it could be a game changer for you. And there's relationships like even our church, we don't have a huge church, but we have a small church. There's people on our music team that are like jazz influence and stuff. They have a band together, but they work in the music industry. So we have a guy in our music team that works for Blue Microphone. And so you come to our church and, you know, you start singing, all of a sudden, oh, I know a rep from Blue Microphone. And, you know, and this guy knows this person. And so it's building relationships. And, you know, we have guys that gig and do stuff, and they have expertise, and you just learn so much.
You learn so much.
So it's good for you. And obviously, just, you know, obviously I think that there's a spiritual benefit as well. Like
Absolutely.
if you are a Christian, it's a way for you to stay engaged, staying part of the church, and you just be able to do two things at once.
Yeah, so. And you know, even if you're not a Christian, like there's a positivity aspect of it,
Sure.
right? Like unknowingly, even if you're just an editor and you're editing the sermon, there are certain positive things that are being deposited in your life that maybe consciously you don't know, and it's subconscious. But yeah, with terms of relationship, it's in the music industry, we always make the joke, like, you want to be the person that they can grab a beer with, which is not typically what you would say in a church setting. So then maybe you change it to be like, you want to be with a person that you can get communion with, or
coffee.
Get coffee with, or something. But yeah, I mean, what's funny is the person that we're talking about that goes to our church that now works for Blue Mic. I've known him my entire life. He's done a bunch of different things in the music industry, but it wasn't until recently when I started going back to your guys' church and helping lead worship and everything. Because when COVID hit, I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do? Blah, 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 blah. And then Uncle Kevin reached out to me. He was like, hey, we really need help with worship and setting things up. You have a lot of knowledge in this. We can really use you. And I was like, oh my gosh, yes, that helped me out a lot. Yeah. And so then I reconnected with Kevin, and Kevin was like, hey, I actually work for Blue. I think it would be really great to like get you connected to Blue and starting work with Blue. And I don't know if a lot of you guys see, I mean, I know we have like an SM57 here, 58. But you know, as you can see, like I have a Blue mic right here. I use my Yeti for almost everything. If you've seen videos of that, Blue is like a really big thing. And I would have never thought, even though I loved Blue mic so much, that would have been a connection for me. Yeah. And it all came through church. Yeah. So, you know, there's just because somebody goes to church, doesn't mean they're not connected and they're not in the music industry. In Nashville, it's like a little different. When you go to a Nashville church, everybody's in the music industry. Yes. Like literally every single person is in the industry. Yes. So it's very normal. It's almost like, you know, like the barbershop. You know how like everybody goes to the barbershop and they meet and they connect? That's what like church is in Nashville.
I'm jealous.
Yeah. So if you're in one of those cities, that's like really, really huge. Yeah. And same with LA. Like a lot of people in LA go to church too, and a lot of people in New York go to church, but because you're in big music cities. But if you're not in a big music city, don't think that, you know, the church is a place to connect with people. It's a group of people creating the church. That's what the church is. Yeah. It's just a group of people, and you're connecting with all these people, and you end up learning so much. I mean, Absolutely. I did not play gospel at all. Yeah. At all. And then I started playing with our whole band, who's predominantly gospel. They're always throwing that middle gospel chord in the transition of things, and I had to learn them, and I had to be on my feet about them. So it makes you a better musician. It makes
Absolutely.
you a better everything.
Yeah. And so like even like back in the day when I was leading our youth group, and we had like a youth band, and we did things like we did Turn It Up. We called these worship nights, and you were involved with some of those.
We did I Got a Feeling.
Yeah,
Absolutely. I think we did the normal
and we worked
version.
on it for weeks and months, and it didn't change the world. I mean, it's not like, and we weren't doing anything online back then, but think about for you, and there was we used to have Erica Gutron, who's now in the music industry, and she's doing really great. And we had you guys and others, another guy that was on our team that's a worship pastor at another church, and then myself, Micah, different ones. And so like from that little group, it was like, you know, we had 250 people at the event or 200 people at the event, and we put this thing together, and we thought it was the best thing ever, and we loved it. And looking back, I'm like, I wish I would have done more with you. Like I really should have given her more songs. But yeah, we look back and say, well, look at what came out of that group. Right. Like in hindsight, 10 years later, look what came out of that group. Yeah. Like we were nothing back then. Yeah. And you can just, you can look down on it and say, oh, this is just not a big deal. Right. But 10 years later, look where those people are and look at what they're doing. So I just think that, that it pays off. So, and, I go to NAM every year and, dude, like when I first started going to NAM like 10 years ago, people, if I told someone I was a pastor or a worship, they would literally like, oh, okay. And then they wouldn't give you a card, disregard you.
Yeah.
You were the outsider, dude. If you're a worship, they bring me into like the special room with the water bottle. If you've been to NAM, you kind of know what I'm talking about. You go into like the special room, like, come here, let me talk to you. Here's our pamphlet. Call me. Here's my direct self number. Anything you need. Like they pull out the red carpet. So like the music industry has completely changed, and so. They do the night of worship at NAM now with Yamaha and different things, and they have all these big time sponsors, and so it's just it's changed. And so,
it's totally changed, and I know there's sometimes stigma with certain things. Ironically enough, Mike and I talked about that. Like there's certain stigmas that people still think about the church, and I would just like to say that those. Maybe some of those stigmas are still there, but for the majority of it, people are welcoming change in, especially right now during this period of time. And the church isn't what it was 20 years ago. Just like, people aren't who they were 20 years ago. Yeah. Like they've grown, they've changed, and they're looking for musicians, and they're looking for tech people and marketers and all these different people. And so you can just get tapped into a very positive environment really quickly and easily. And I don't know, it just seems very mutually beneficial. Yeah. And it's just, like he said, like people at NAM are like looking for pastors now, rather than like before it was like, ooh, you're a worship pastor. Ooh, you're probably not that good. That's not how it is today. Like I remember my church, I went to Grace Center in Nashville. That worship service was banging. Yeah. I mean, literally, sometimes the pastor would get up and be like, I feel like the Spirit's moving and we're just going to have a worship day. Yeah. And then just decided not to preach because they were going in. So the musicality that's there is on another level. And it's not like you're coming in and saying, well, I'm the best musician here and there's nobody to work with. Like maybe you might walk into if it's a small enough church, you might walk into that scenario, but a lot of times there's a built-in infrastructure with a church where there has been, like for our instance, Ron, who was like our main musician, taught all of these kids when we were learning kids how to play guitar, how to play the drums, how to do all these. I mean, Joel, who's been with our church forever, taught me how to play the keys, taught Micah how to play the keys. Yeah. So now we have this built-in almost legacy of all these different musicians that have been growing for the last 20 years with these experts. Yeah, absolutely. You're just not going in.
Yeah. And if you don't know anything about church culture or music, go listen to get on your Spotify and go listen to some of this stuff.
Oh,
and
it's crazy.
And there's some stuff that's more traditional, a little bit more safe, but 4 chords and just real easy. But there's some stuff out there that's like, that's really excellent. Go listen to Tasha Cobbs and go listen to We the Kingdom and Elevation Worship and some of these ones. Hillsong. And you listen to it and there's like any kind of flavor you can think of, and it's some cool stuff. It's fun to play worship music now.
It is.
It's not boring. It's like fun. Yeah, and it's like, it's a blast. So
yeah, it used to be like back in the day, like you only had like Hillsong and like Israel Houghton, right? Like Israel was like the gospel side, and like Darlene was like the
back
more
in the 90s. Yeah, it was totally different. Just and I love that still, and it's great. It's brought us to where we are today.
Let's not shout to the Lord. Like that's still a jam.
I mean, Darlene's my favorite of all time. Yeah. But man, like today, it's just so much content. There's so much out there. Because of technology, any church can make a recording studio at their church or do a live recording session in their church building. Because now these church buildings are outfitted like concert halls.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, seriously, they're outfitted like a concert hall, and they do live recording, and they videotape it and do all this stuff, and they put out their own albums. And it's like, it's just so much stuff out there. Yeah. So I have found some churches that maybe aren't as well known, and I follow them, and we do their songs. And you'd be shocked. So you have to when you go to a church. I would say if you're getting back to like just starting off, if you're gonna go to a church and just meet them or figure out where you're. Let's say you're in a really small town.
Yeah.
And let's say you have a church on the corner, it's a local church, and it's smaller. You got to meet them where they're at.
Yes.
So you can't come in there and be like, "Oh, you guys are doing this. This is terrible. You need to do this." You need to encourage
Baby
them.
steps.
And like sometimes they need encouragement. They've been beaten down. They're struggling. They don't know the answer. They're not experts. So you just got to come in and say, "Okay, this what you're doing. Okay, here's an idea of how we can get started."
Yeah.
Meet them where they're at. So like our church. Turning Point, I would say we're somewhere in the middle. So we're not in the beginning. We're not where we want to be.
Right.
We're kind of in the middle, and we have a ways to go. But there's some churches that are right in the beginning, and there's other churches who are on the cutting edge,
Right.
like literally the industry leaders.
They're pushing it forward. Yeah.
And they're pushing it forward for everybody. So, but there's a lot of in between. There's a lot of churches that are all over that spectrum. So you got to go in there and say, "How can I serve?"
Yeah.
That's if you have a heart of service, if you have a heart like how can I help?
Yeah.
You're gonna fit in.
And also understanding where the church is at and where you're at, and then trying to balance that, right? Managing expectations is really, really important. I know I've talked about this before. Like, you also have to set up boundaries to what you're able to do for the church as well, because a lot of times, like, the church always needs help. There's like, they're always looking, the more people that they can bring in to help, unless you're just crazy, like, they'll take you on. And so you also have to manage like expectations with them and saying, okay, look, this is what I can do. I want to do all of this. This is where I want to take us, but that requires a lot more than the time that I have to give, right? And just understanding that, because what you don't want to happen is you have this really positive relationship and positive community that you've now been a part of, and now you feel overworked, you feel bitter or whatever, and you're like, I'm doing all these different things and I can't even do my own job. Like, that's not what they want. They just want you to say, hey, look, this is what I can do. This is where I think I can help. I can see you guys are moving in this direction. Here's what I think I can do at this period of time in my life.
Sure.
And then just doing that. And hopefully the church comes back, which 9 times out of 10 they want to reward the people that have helped and moving on.
It could be as little as just singing once a week.
And that's literally what I do.
Like, just backup. You could just do backup vocals. Or just lead worship, or just play a lead guitar. Like, if let's say like you're just shredding on guitar. And they don't have a lead guitar player.
Right.
You come in once a week. You get paid to come in and play with the band. So it could be as little as that, or it could be more like behind the scenes, like we talked about with other aspects of their AV team. So there's lots of different opportunities. So just keep an open mind and see what's out there. And you're never going to lose in this situation. I don't see how if you get plugged into a healthy church, how you're not going to win and how you're not going to grow as a musician, as a singer.
Oh for sure. The growth part is just like, oh my God,
it's crazy. And I could tell stories. I mean, I could tell, like, we named a couple people that were at our church, and I could just tell stories, story after story, where there was relational connections, and there was people that start off here. And we had a guy that literally was he was a garage door installer, and his name is Nate. I don't know if you remember him.
I remember Nate. Yeah, and, ran sound.
So we said, hey, you want to serve on our sound team? And so we were actually at that time meeting in a school. So we had to bring in all of our chairs, all of our equipment, set it up, do church, break it all down so early. We had a huge trailer. And a lot of churches do this. Right now they can't, because the school's like, no, you can't meet. But anyways, so he started serving on sound. He's a detailed dude, and he just really pours out whatever he does into it. So he started loving it. He went to college, became a professional sound technician.
I didn't know this.
Yes, professional sound technician, and got hired at some of these big churches. And was doing sound for like these big churches. He doesn't go to our church anymore. Now he's moved to the East Coast just recently. He's gotten married. He's moved on. But he's a professional sound technician, and it started at the church. And when he started at our church, he was already like 27, I would say. And so he had already had a career. He'd already kind of been doing some other things. And he grew up in the church, but he kind of got rededicated, got his life, and he started serving in sound. And he's like, dude, I want to do this. I want to do this for a living. And
he was like one of our best sound guys.
He was so detailed, and he's
super
prepared.
Detailed. I remember he tuned my guitar one time, and you know what's? This is a funny memory. He was tuning my guitar, and he was like, "Oh, I hate the B string," and I'm like, "Why?" And he's like, it stands for the string. And I just started laughing. He was a really, really good guy, and just you know what? Like, we were up so early. I mean, we had to be there so early because we had to set up and everything. And I mean, they were there before the worship team was there, and the worship team's usually the first people through the door. And I never heard him complain.
Yeah.
Never heard him complain. I will say though, we drank a lot of red lines to stay.
That was back when energy drinks first came out.
Yeah.
And people didn't understand like there's like side effects to it. So we had people just ripping those things, just 2 or 3 Red Bulls, and their hearts like palpitating, and they have to go to the ER.
Right. Okay, here's another funny memory. So there's this thing. I don't know if they're out everywhere, but I know for sure in California we still have them. They never got banned or anything. But there's this drink called a Red Line. You had to be 18 to buy it, right?
Really?
Yeah, you had to be 18 to buy it, and and which is funny because I drank a ton of those, but I was never 18, right? So whatever. But yeah, you had to be 18 to buy it, and it says on the bottle, it has a line on it and a dash through the line halfway through the bottle, and it says on the bottle you have to drink half of it, wait 15 minutes, drink the other half, right? No one ever did that. We were like
the serving size serving size is half the bottle. Okay. Yeah. That makes sense.
Right. So we're like shotgunning these things, right? And basically I have one, right? Like I think TC bought me one or something. So I drink the whole thing, okay? I was on something on that worship set. I was like, you better get like I was just like going in on worship that day. Crazy. Yeah, that stuff was wild. But yeah, I mean, again, just like referring back to like how many of us ended up in the music industry, even into some capacity. Like some people, I would even consider the music industry like worship in a church. That's music. That's the music industry. That's the music industry.
So there are people doing music for a living. Yeah.
You can't separate those two. Yeah. Like you're doing music full time.
It's a genre.
It's a genre. It's a full time thing. So I definitely wouldn't knock that. And just looking at even our small little church, how many of us ended up being in the music industry, whether it be in church or a lot of us did stuff outside of church. I mean, obviously, like I'm more in secular music. Erica's more in secular music. Kevin, most of the stuff he does is in secular music. Yeah. So I think sometimes people want to separate church and state. Yeah. And it doesn't need to be separated. As a musician, and I've said this multiple times, you have multiple avenues of revenue. It does not, when you are creating your income as a musician, it does not typically come from one source. No. Probably
no one is like that.
Yeah.
Especially starting off.
I mean, like, some with teachers, it's like one source, right? Or with like business people, it's typically, your one job, you work 5 days a week.
You're an entrepreneur.
Yeah. As a musician, you're an entrepreneur and you have multiple avenues of revenue. So, how great would it be to get plugged into a church that is consistently every Sunday you're getting paid X amount? Yeah. Right? And you can count on that and it's consistent. Unless you don't show up that Sunday, you know what I mean? You're still getting paid. So it's really, really important to find those little things that are a consistent income for you long term.
And it all started with when my dad planted the church in 1994. Wow. It literally started with, from the beginning, he had got some guys that played in a jazz band and stuff and say, do you have any friends that play bass or that play? Yeah. We used to have a sax player that played there full time in our church.
I remember those days.
And we want another sax player. Yeah. He doesn't play with us anymore, but we've had flute players and different ones. But anyways, he was like, we need some musicians. And it wasn't like, the traditional way is, well, just look for inside your church and find it. Right. Well, that's just like so impossible. Yeah. Do I have any professional bass players laying around in my 150 member church? Right. No, you don't. Okay. Yeah. So unless you want to get some grandma on her bass, it's not going to work. So anyways, we hired some guys, and in the beginning it was just like we'd hire guys because it is worship, and we don't have to get into the whole aspect of what worship is and stuff right now, but there is some, you don't want to get some guy up there that really is resistant to the Spirit and resistant to God and doesn't like the God. Right. But our philosophy was, my dad's philosophy was like, he'd sit down with him and say, look, are you a Christian? Do you know God? Are you open to God? Right. If we have you come play, are you open to it? And he was like, yeah, I'm open to it. Like, I've always been interested. And that's how it started. Yeah. And now he got saved and got married in our church and all these things happened. Yeah. But it was, my dad was forward thinking. He wasn't just rigid, like, okay, do you speak in tongues? Or, are you, different?
Where's your spiritual level at?
Where's your membership card? And so because he wasn't like that, it gave the opportunity. Now,
Yeah.
searches, if you take you're taking a risk on people in general, so sometimes it doesn't work out.
Yeah.
But for the most part, I've seen it personally always work out.
Yeah.
And so again, because it's built out of relationship, I've
Right.
seen it work out so many times.
Yeah.
So, but it just starts with like the pastor being open. And then just the person coming in looking to serve.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a really big need. I know we've been like harping on that during this podcast, but there really is a really big need. And if you are open to it.
I think some people just don't know.
Yeah. I think.
And that's why I keep saying it. Because I'm like,
I keep saying
like
it
just
too.
get on YouTube.
Yeah.
Get on. I mean, you would just look at any like church in your area. Get on Google Maps and look up like the church in your area, and then go look at their website.
Yeah.
Go look at their YouTube, and you're gonna see the what they're going through,
Yeah.
and you're gonna be like, oh man, like
Yeah.
you'll see. It's just so easy. It's just I can't even tell you like how easy it is to do this.
Yeah.
Like there's people around you that are always looking for churches. So when they look for a church, what are they doing now? They get online, they look at your website, they
Right.
look at your Instagram, they look at your Facebook, they look at your YouTube, and that's how they decided they're going to visit you.
Yeah.
So like churches realize that now. They're not just like, oh, there's a church on the corner, I'm going
Yeah.
to go show up there.
Right.
Like they look online 1st and they look at your digital footprint.
Right.
Then they say, I'll go try
Oh,
your
yeah.
church.
Does it line up with me? Blah, blah, blah,
Yes.
blah, blah.
So churches are like, well, what's our welcome video? We need to film a welcome video. We need to film a video about what we're all about. They're starting to do leadership training online.
Yep.
Like I can't tell you like all the things that we're doing behind the scenes now, filming wise and stuff that we never did before. That only the big churches did. The
Yeah.
1% of churches
Yeah,
did.
exactly.
It was happening, but it was the 1%.
Right.
Now it's way more than that. It's
way more than
high.
that. Yeah.
It's saturation.
Yeah.
So it's just exploded. So it's just such, and some of you guys might even have the gear. Like you already own a camera.
Right.
You already own this. So the church is like, well, we can't afford a camera, $4,000 camera. Well, look, I have a camera.
Yeah.
I have this mic.
Right.
I have this stuff. So how about I use my gear and you pay me to come in here and
Yeah,
I use
exactly.
my gear. Like you would be a lifesaver.
Yeah.
You would be a lifeline for them. You would just be a game changer.
Right.
Okay. You have no idea what it would be like for a small church to get you in the door.
Yeah.
So I trust us. Try it out.
Yeah, just
and
take a chance. You know
take a
what I mean? And
chance.
take a few chances. Maybe you try 2 or 3 churches out and it's not a right fit, but then you find the right one. Like just remain open. Don't have a chip on your shoulder about
Yeah.
certain things. Like remain open. Like things are gonna fit in the way that they're gonna fit. And
Yeah.
you know there is such a huge need
Yeah.
in the church.
Yeah.
Like I mean. Think about how many churches are in America. There are so many churches in America. And now, especially now because of COVID, everybody is going online. Everybody is needing good music people. Like, because if they're going online, they can't have crappy musicians. You know what I mean? They gotta level up the musicianship as well. So
Somebody needs to know how to run the soundboard.
I know somebody, you know what I
yeah.
mean? So like, again, and like Caleb said, if you have the gear,
Yeah.
they're like, oh, you mean we don't have to rent a camera that's like, what,
Yeah.
$500 for the weekend or
Yeah.
whatever it is? Oh, you already have the gear and then you can just give us the SIM card and whatever. Like, that's
Yeah.
an ideal scenario for them. They're always trying to, like, trying to make every penny go the extra,
Absolutely.
you know.
And there's all
extra
different
mile.
kinds of budgets.
Yeah.
So you got to meet them where they're at.
Right.
What's their budget? And sometimes it might start small, but if you start to bring people into their church,
Yeah.
the budget grows.
Yes,
You know,
exactly.
If you start to put up content and you make their worship go to another level, all of a sudden, like, okay, we're
Right.
gonna
Yeah,
bring you
yeah,
on
yeah.
more.
Yeah, exactly.
And so your gift makes room for yourself in
Yes,
that way. You know?
absolutely. Okay, so why don't you leave everybody with 1 or 2 like takeaways? This is what I think is just super important. And I'll just leave it at that. I'll just let you say the 1 or 2 takeaways that you want to give people before we end this.
Yeah, as far just kind of recapping.
Yeah, recapping or maybe we didn't even touch on this, but you just are like, this is something that I've walked away with that has really helped me in the 20 years of my life and working in the music industry and working at a church and all these different things.
Yeah, I just think that the season's ripe right now. So number one, the season's it's the season for it.
Yeah.
So it's not like you're trying to do something that like churches aren't ready for. So right now the season's ready right now. You have the skill set right now. Like you're already a pro at these
And
things.
you most likely don't have a job right now.
And you don't have a job. You have time on your hands. It's literally a perfect storm. Okay.
It is.
So you have this, they have this culture that's ready. You have all the dynamics are in place. It's just take the first step.
Yeah.
So as long as you're willing, and again, if your attitude is I know it all and I'm going to teach these
You're right.
corny church people how to do it, that's probably not great.
Yeah.
You're not going to succeed. But if your heart is just I want to help these people, and and if you understand church culture at all, if anything like that, you're going to understand what I'm talking about, which is I want to come in and help and serve, and I get to get paid for it. It's like
cool.
How can you
Golden.
like it's amazing, and it's on Sundays when I don't have a gig. Like
yeah, it's perfect.
Yeah, it's perfect.
It's so funny. Yeah, like you don't even have a gig on that day. You don't
Yeah.
have a gig at that time. Like
Yeah.
even if you have a gig that night, you don't have it at that time of the day.
Absolutely.
So,
yeah. So that's how
important.
I'd say. Just it's ripe. It's the season's ripe for it. You're ready for it. Take that first step, and I think you'll be surprised how much success you can have.
Yeah. I think that's really, really good. Well, thank you so much, Caleb,
Yeah.
for coming on.
It's been
Seriously,
fun. This is good.
It's so much fun when I get to do what I do, but also bring family in on it.
Yeah.
And you know,
And we're living this thing out. I'm not sharing these things today because we have it all down. Like literally, like I'm looking for an AV person right now. I'm looking for people with these expertise, and like it's hard.
Yeah.
Like it's like
It's not easy.
It's not easy. So like from on my perspective, on my side of it, is it's hard to find these people.
Right.
Like we don't have them growing on trees. So like it's to find the right person to work out some kind of deal. You have to start searching. There's not like a easy place to find these people.
Yeah.
So. Anyways, on my side of it, trust me, just from my
Send in your applications. No,
yeah, seriously, I'll take them. So.
For sure. But thank you so much for coming on. Seriously, you're like what we've done so much together. We've lived so much life together, and it's just really awesome to have family on here. And
I'll be back. I'm gonna be back on here.
Yeah. Hey, you know what?
We're gonna break a record with this podcast, and then I'll be back.
Right. Exactly. Facts. Anyways, all right, guys. Have a great week. I will see you next week and try some of these things out. Maybe get connected to a church. I think it'd be really important. They're looking for people. All right. Peace. You got me tripped up in my head.